Now, if you have diabetes and you struggle with sugar cravings, let me tell you, you are not alone. Sugar addiction is real. In fact, blood sugar in somebody with diabetes is already out of balance, and this is going to lead to cravings that are impossible to control. Sugar is, in fact, one of the most addictive substances in our modern diets, and it's very important that we get this straight. So, if you're diabetic, listen up. For diabetics, this is an even bigger problem than just sugar in and of itself. What happens if you have diabetes is your organ that makes the hormone insulin, which is your pancreas, is either not producing enough insulin or your body is not able to respond to the insulin properly. Sometimes, in some people, both of these things are happening at the same time. Now, what's the consequence of this? Well, sugar will linger in your bloodstream. So after you eat, your sugar starts going up. And instead of that sugar being used for energy and getting inside of the cells where it belongs, this is going to stay in your bloodstream. And the consequences are that you will feel tired, you will end up craving things more, and you will ultimately become stuck in a very vicious cycle that feels impossible to break. Now, I want to tell you there's actually good news here. You don't just need more willpower to fix this problem. You need a strategy that actually works. So in this video, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down why sugar addiction is harder to break when you have diabetes. We're going to uncover the hidden root cause of these sugar cravings and why they keep coming back more and more. And then finally, I'm going to introduce you to what I like to call my sugar freedom formula. This is a 5-step process that you can use to break free from this sugar addiction for good, once and for all. So here's the problem. Every time you eat sugar, you're going to feel this temporary relief. Your energy will start to lift. Your mood is going to improve. It might make you even feel happy. And then shortly after, your blood sugar starts spiking up. And then what happens? That hormone, that's job it is to get that blood sugar back down, insulin, starts going up as well. So it floods your system. And then one of two things happens. Either your blood sugar ultimately crashes because the insulin was there, it did its job. Maybe if you're the kind of diabetic that needs to take insulin as a medication, you've dosed yourself with the insulin already, and now it's working and it brings your blood sugar back down. But if this happens too quickly, you might end up feeling a headache, you might have brain fog, and you might ultimately lead into a cycle of having more cravings. But if instead your blood sugar stays high for too long, then what's going to happen? That organ, the pancreas, needs to work even harder. It needs to produce more insulin, and the insulin response over time will start to weaken. If this goes unchecked for too long and you have uncontrolled diabetes for a really long time, your pancreas is ultimately going to kind of crap out and you won't even be able to produce a lot. So that is in and of itself an issue. Either way, you're ultimately going to be left with these stronger cravings. And what that means is your ability to resist them is just going to weaken over time. So no, this is not just a habit that you need to fix. You don't just need to avoid sugar. Recognize that if this is happening to you, you're kind of stuck in this biological trap that's going on in terms of all the chemistry in your body. Now, here's where this is really, really tricky. The hidden sugars that are in our diet are actually making this so much worse. So sugar, if a lot of us are used to reading food labels and we're paying attention to what we eat, we're going to be very aware that sugar is not just in sweet foods and it's not just in desserts. It's actually hiding inside of everyday foods. So think about these things that you might be eating on a regular basis. Wraps, breads, peanut butter, any kind of sauces or dips, salad dressings, even things that are meant to be healthy, granola bars, regular granola, yogurt, non-dairy milks like oat milk or almond milk. And so the fact is there's sugar just so widespread in a lot of our food supply, it's really hard to avoid it if we're buying conventional foods. This is why just cutting back on sugar doesn't really work, because for a lot of us, if we're not used to thinking about how to get ahead of this, we're eating way more sugar than we even realize. Ultimately, we have to break this addiction at the very root cause of it. Okay, so let's be really clear. Like, what is this problem really about? Is it just about sugar and glucose? Really, it's not. If you're somebody who has diabetes, you probably know the drill. You're constantly battling cravings. This is frustrating and it is exhausting. And you know that eating sugar is not good for your diabetes. You've probably been told that by doctors, dietitians, pharmacists, whoever you work with as your healthcare team. And this is really an issue because quitting is going to feel impossible. And maybe you've tried quitting cold turkey. You've done an extreme sugar detox. Ultimately, how long did that really last for you? Probably not very long, because you might have realized your cravings became so intense that you ended up binging, which is like the opposite of the things you're trying to do. Then that leads to a vicious cycle too. You're gonna have guilt after you're eating a lot of sugar. You know that's making your blood sugar worse. And so then you are left with this fear that your diabetes is progressing, your cravings aren't controlled, you feel like you're stuck in this vicious cycle. All on top of the fact that you see your friends or your family members who don't have diabetes and they don't have these same struggles. And so you have to watch other people eat what seems freely, while instead you're stuck having to think about every single bite you take. Now, at its worst, this sugar addiction is going to make you feel powerless. And some of you might be in this spot right now. It's possible that's how you found this video. So we need to really get to the bottom of this. I want each and every one of you to walk away from this video feeling like you mastered this concept of sugar addiction. So first we need to talk about why sugar as a molecule, sugar as a chemical, sugar as a food is so addictive when you have diabetes. And we need to talk about this from the perspective of the body for a second. So warning, this is going to be a little bit of science, but I think a lot of you are going to appreciate how your body actually works. We have to talk about the insulin dysfunction that's happening. So there's two different groups of diabetics. We have our type 1 diabetics and our type 2. The physiology or what's happening inside of the body for each of these diseases is pretty different. So try to keep it straight. If you have type 1 diabetes, your pancreas can't produce enough insulin because your immune system is attacking your pancreas. This is an autoimmune condition. Now, on the flip side, if you have type 2 diabetes, it's a totally different game. Your pancreas, that organ that makes insulin, can produce enough. The problem is, outside of the pancreas in the rest of your body, the cells that are supposed to respond to the signal that is insulin can't respond. The signal doesn't work. So you have insulin, but your body just doesn't respond to it. And this is called insulin resistance. Now, for the sake of this conversation, and I think what's going to help the most of you, the fact is, the vast majority of people with diabetes have type 2. So I'm going to focus more on the type 2 mechanisms, and I'm going to teach more from that perspective. But that doesn't mean it's not useful for you if you do have type 1 diabetes. So let's talk about the type 2 diabetes system here. When your insulin isn't working properly, sugar builds up in your bloodstream. You've probably checked your blood sugar and said, wow, my number's really high. Well, that's what it means. You have a high amount of sugar in your blood. And the issue is that the goal of insulin is to help bring that back down. It doesn't burn it up. It takes the sugar and puts it inside your cells. So it hides it from the blood. But if the insulin doesn't work, it can't do that. It can't enter the cells. Now, here's what you got to know. Your brain is responding to what's going on inside of your digestive system because it actually is the control system to tell the different parts of your body, the different cells, the different organs, of when to produce which kind of hormone based off of what state you're in. Are you in a state of being hungry and needing to eat? Or are you in a state of being full because you just ate? So the brain is really the powerhouse behind all of this. So if you have just eaten and your blood sugar is high, but you have this insulin resistance and the insulin doesn't work, so that means you're having trouble bringing the blood sugar back down and having it enter the cells, your brain registers this in a completely twisted way. Your brain only knows that you've eaten enough sugar or you've had enough fuel when the cells have enough fuel inside of them. Your brain does not signal about how much sugar's in the bloodstream. It knows how much sugar's in the cells or how much there isn't in the cells. So this is the trick. If the sugar can't get into your cells, then the brain thinks that your body needs more energy and it needs more sugar. What's going to happen? I want you to take a second and think about this. Guess for yourself. What would happen if the energy molecule which is sugar, is not where it needs to be to actually make energy that our body can use, well, the brain is going to think that it's starving, that your body is starving. And what's going to happen? It's going to send signals down to the rest of your body, to your different organs and to your different organ systems that help to make hormones. The brain's going to say, hey, we need to eat again. And so you're going to get signals that tell you that you're hungry all over. Now, obviously, this is a vicious cycle. This cycle is going to keep churning around, leading to more insulin resistance, leading to constant energy crashes, and leading to even stronger cravings for sugar. This is obviously not a good thing. So, how can you get ahead of this? How can you actually fix this cycle and get your body out of it? Well, here's my argument. I don't think you need to just fight the cravings because it's kind of a losing battle. Instead, a better strategy is to outsmart them. So, what does this look like? We need to help you reset your body's relationship with sugar. And I like to do this with what I call the sugar freedom formula, these 5 steps to break free from the sugar addiction. So let's jump right into them. Step number 1. This is upgrading your breakfast to help you set the tone for the rest of the day, metabolically speaking. So what is this going to look like? Well, this is your first meal of the day. When you first wake up in the morning and you have had nothing to eat yet, this is, in theory, when your insulin is at its absolute lowest level of the whole day. And it makes sense because insulin's only supposed to go up after you've eaten. And it's probably been the longest stretch of time since the last time you ate, likely dinner yesterday. So this is your first meal of the day. So you could think of this as the meal that really determines the blood sugar stability for your whole day. Now, think about what a typical breakfast is in the United States or in a lot of Western countries. It's usually something that's very high carb and very sugary. Oatmeal with a lot of maple syrup or brown sugar and fruits, or it's toast with jam, or it's a bagel, or it's a donut, something actually dessert-like. I mean, you imagine a breakfast, it's going to be probably on the sweet side of things. Now, if you start your day with a very sweetened, sugar-laden breakfast, it's going to set you up for an entire day of cravings. So I like to argue, let's totally flip this around. Let's have you eat a breakfast that's rooted in really the things that are going to stabilize your blood sugar: protein, healthy fat, and fiber. Now, what is fiber? Fiber is that bulky component of a lot of plant foods: vegetables, whole fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, even beans. So here's what I like to argue are some better breakfast options. How about scrambled eggs, avocado, and some slices of tomato? How about some Greek yogurt with nuts and seeds and maybe some really high fibrous berries like blackberries, raspberries, blueberries? How about quinoa oatmeal or quinoa with vegetables and eggs on the side? You can imagine how many possibilities there are. So I'm not going to make this a video about breakfast ideas. We have other videos on this channel about that. But you can start to put the pieces together. It has to have all of these things: some protein, some fiber, some healthy fat. Now, if you are actually looking for a little bit more guidance about how to make these balanced meals, well, I have a free guide for you. It's in the description below, and it's my ebook, The Perfect Meal Formula. So I made this ebook to make it really easy for you to figure out how to balance out all of your meals. So make sure to check out the link in the description below this video so that you don't have to keep guessing about what to make for your next meal. Okay, we're ready for step number 2. Step number 2 is to balance your meals to prevent sugar crashes. So I kind of alluded to this just before. The game here is that you want to avoid eating sugar in isolation or sugar alone, because the thing is, the body is used to eating full complex meals. Now, you need to have the right balance of macronutrients. Our body has nutritional needs that are very expansive. We have to have certain amounts of vitamins, minerals, and then all of our different macronutrients. So these are enough grams of protein in a day, enough grams of fat, especially the essential fatty acids. And for a lot of us, we do well with carbohydrate. Now, ideally, each meal should be balanced. It should have protein, that's something like yogurt, chicken, tofu, fish, you name it. Healthy fats, which is often olive oil, nuts or seeds, avocado. And then something with fiber: vegetables, whole grains, legumes, the list that I gave you before. All of those things together are going to help slow down your digestion, which is the process of breaking down food into its miniature components and then allowing all the chemistry in your body to take effect to absorb those nutrients into the bloodstream and then have them travel around to your body to feed your cells. So the game here is when you slow digestion, if you give it the right fuel, you're going to prevent sugar spikes. Plus, it's going to keep you fuller for longer, which will ultimately reduce your cravings and may even reduce the amount of food you need to eat in an entire day. And for a lot of you who are looking for weight loss, this part does still matter. It does matter how many total calories you eat. So I already mentioned that I have this free guide, and I just can't reiterate enough that it sounds simpler than it is, or for some of you, it might sound really complicated. Wherever you fall in this process of thinking about how to make balanced meals and how to set up your nutrition for your success, don't forget to check out my ebook because I made it just for you. It's totally free, and I want it to be useful for you so that you can master your diet for diabetes so much easier. Okay, we're ready for the third step. Step number 3 here is to retrain your taste buds by cutting out the hidden sugars. So, what does this mean? Does it mean that you need to go cold turkey and quit all sugar from one day to the next? I'd argue no, but it is about reducing the hidden sugars that are stuck in your diet and you don't even realize it. And they are just gonna keep your sugar cravings strong without you feeling like you have a good grasp on it. So here's how you can start this. I always like to teach my patients this, and I like to teach this on YouTube as well. The most important thing, if you're gonna buy boxed food or packaged food, is to read the food labels and the ingredient list. I'm usually a lot less interested in the grams of the different nutrients as I am looking directly at the ingredients and seeing what is in this thing that I'm buying. Sugar has so many names to it. So anytime you see in an ingredient list the word syrup, nectar, dextrose, maltodextrin, fructose, you're going to know that this is sugar. That's all that it is. So a lot of the times it'll say things like cane sugar or even like honey, molasses. Those are the natural things that we're used to. But sugar also has some sneaky scientific names at times. So it's about educating yourself for knowing when it's coming in the ingredient list without you maybe realizing it. So first you check the food labels. Then the second part is we want to swap out the sugary condiments that we use in our diet for good options that have either low amount of sugar or just no sugar at all. So this is going to be, for example, ketchup. Everybody likes ketchup. Ketchup is not inherently evil, but you need to understand it is really just concentrated juice from a tomato with added sugar inside of it. And so it's not anything other than sugar to your body. Instead, it's so much better to buy an alternative that doesn't have added sugar, like pure tomato paste. At least you know this is really just the tomato inside of it. It's not necessarily going to have the same flavor, but that should be by design because it'll help you start to appreciate how sugary ketchup really is. You also don't need to buy prepackaged sauces. If you can, make your own dressings, make your own sauces, then you can completely control the amount of sugar inside. Then my third trick here, this is something that I've learned a long time ago and I do it as much as I can. Using different herbs or spices in the diet that help add a sweetness that your brain registers as sweet, but it's not real sugar. So this is something like cinnamon. Some of you use vanilla extract, vanilla powders, or even cacao powder, cocoa, in other words. These are all flavors that our brain is really registering as on the sweeter side of things, but inherently they're not necessarily sweet and they don't actually have sugar. So you can always add a little bit of sugar yourself and control the amount in it, but by using these like spices really is what they are, it's going to just add this sweetness to it that you're going to start to realize like, wow, I can do this. I can enjoy my food without actual sugar. Now, for example, how do I actually use this? Well, I like to roast vegetables in the oven. It's one of my favorite things to make for myself and my family. So when I'm cooking sweet potatoes, for example, I like to season them with salt and a little bit of cinnamon. No added sugar, but I'm telling you, compared to a sweet potato cooked without the cinnamon coated one tastes so much sweeter and it's amazing. It's such a nice alternative to like a sweet potato pie that is ultimately a dessert. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. You can be creative with this, but that's just my little tidbit, the thing that I like to do. All right, I think we're ready for our fourth step of this process. The fourth step of the Sugar Freedom Formula is to manage your emotional cravings without sugar. Now, cravings can be just as much physical all of the chemistry that we talked about in our body, all the issues with the insulin resistance, but it can also be emotional. So you have to think, what are my cravings telling me and when are they coming up? We know that things like stress, boredom, and habits keep us stuck and they keep us in a loop of having cravings, feeding them, having more, feeding them again. So I urge you to kind of think about this from a different angle. The goal is to stop the emotional cravings. Now, if we're truly hungry, we're hungry. There's nothing we can do about that. But sometimes we're craving food, especially sweetened things, just because we feel an emotional pull. So if you start to notice that this happens to you, I want you to do the best that you can. Pause and ask yourself, am I actually hungry or am I just craving comfort? Now, comfort is a real need. We need to feel comfortable. It's actually rooted in our biology. We don't want to be in a constant state of stress. We need to be able to relax and to disengage from the things that challenge us in life. So there's a real need for relaxing and being comfortable, but asking yourself, if my goal is to be comfortable, do I need to turn to food or sugar to actually feed that craving? The other option is if you're the kind of person that you are like, I just don't have a grip on my emotions, like I feel like I get all over the place and I lose control. Well, in the short term, there's always the option to kind of distract yourself. If you're craving sugar and you're thinking, I need candy, I need a cookie, something like that, maybe the first best step is to just push back, distract yourself, go for a quick walk, drink water, make sure you're staying hydrated, because a lot of the times our cravings for food are actually a thirst desire that we're not recognizing. Even calling somebody, calling a friend, just distracting yourself with something else entirely might be the thing to kind of snap you out of it. And the goal in the long term is to actually replace habits that we may have if we're used to turning to something sweet, especially if we're used to sweetening up our coffees or we're drinking sugary energy drinks. Other ways that sugar sneaks into our diet, that's not just food. This one can be really hard for some people. So the goal is to, in the short term, get rid of the sugar in any way that you can, whether it's cutting it down when you go to, I don't know, get your Starbucks, ask for half sugar, see if you can handle that. Now you at least know you're cutting back. The goal would be to ultimately get off of it. And I know a lot of you go for the sugar alternatives. So these are non-caloric sweeteners. But in any case, try getting a different type of a beverage. Maybe it's a tea. Maybe it's having a mint, a sugar-free mint. Maybe you just need to take a small piece of a dark chocolate. Whatever you need to do to kind of replace your habit for typically reaching for real sugar. Any little bit counts. So we're ready for our last step here. This is, and I kind of alluded to this before, to stay hydrated. And you want to use your smart substitutions here. So I mentioned this. A lot of the time, dehydration can mimic craving for sugar. When you're actually thirsty, you might feel like you're craving something to eat, especially something sugary or sweet, dessert-like, but your body's in fact dehydrated. And we know that hydration is essential for our bodies to work well. So the goal here is before eating something sweet and reaching for that sugary drink or sugary snack, just drink a glass of water first. Just see where you're at after that. Because I guarantee you, probably about half the time, maybe even more, your craving might diminish after you've quenched your thirst. But if you do really need something sweet, there are still better options than straight up dessert or candy. Ideally, you could enjoy something like a very dark chocolate, like 75 or 70% cacao or higher is typically going to be a good spot to land where there's not too much added sugar, but it's not entirely bitter. You also can just have a piece of whole fruit, especially if it's combined with the other components of the healthy trifecta that are part of my perfect meal formula. If you have fruit along with almonds, for example, that's a fantastic snack for giving yourself the craving of sweetness, but also eating something that's healthy for your body. And then just having nuts or seeds. Another crunchy snack, maybe it's not the sweetness that you really need, but you need the crunch or you're used to having something chewy. There's always ways to kind of build in healthy alternatives. Okay, that was a lot of steps. We had 5 steps of the sugar freedom formula. Now, hopefully at this point, you've realized that overcoming sugar addiction with diabetes is not just about willpower. There's physiologic mechanisms working against you, and there are so many ways that you can get ahead of this and start fixing the vicious cycle that you might find yourself in. You ultimately just want to give your body the right signals. This will allow you to naturally stop craving the sugar, and it might happen before you even know it. I hope you recognize as well that this sugar freedom formula, it's not a diet, it's not cookie cutter. You have to make it work for you and find the things that are uniquely working for you, maybe better than the person next to you. So recognize that this is a strategy. It's kind of your roadmap for getting out of the sugar addiction. So if you follow these 5 steps, I think you will find yourself reducing your cravings. You're not going to feel entirely deprived. You'll have this steady state of energy that kind of lasts you longer throughout your day. Ideally, you're not going to have such high and low swings and crashes in your blood sugar. And as well, you're going to start feeling more in control of your food choices. If you can break the habit of feeding cravings, you've actually just increased your own power. You've increased your own capacity to control the things that often drive us towards making poor choices. And the nice part about this is you're not really obsessing over sugar at all. So what is the best part here? Hopefully you've recognized you don't actually have to quit sugar overnight. This is not dramatic and this is not extreme. You also don't need to give up everything you love. I talked about a lot of ways to still have less sugar in your diet, even if you're not able to eliminate it all. And I'll be honest, I don't think eliminating it all is necessary. Our body is dynamic. We can handle a little bit here and there. If it's your birthday and you love to have a certain kind of cake, I have no right to tell you that you can't do that. There are certain times and places where it's appropriate to have a little bit of indulgence and feel in balance with that process. So hopefully this is clear. It's about these simple shifts. You can upgrade your breakfast. You can balance your meals. You can manage your emotional cravings. Naturally, this is going to help you reduce the sugar cravings over time. And then you'll be in control of your health overall. You'll start to gain control of your diabetes. That is what this is about, and that's what this whole channel is about. I want you to feel like you're free from the sugar addiction. You can live every day without stress. And ideally, if it stresses you out, to start to come up with ideas for how to actually do this in the long term. You don't really know how to make your meals. Don't forget, I have my perfect meal formula in the description below this video. It's my free ebook that I made for you to try to simplify the process of creating balanced meals that are good for your diabetes and your overall health. All right, now you've probably just warmed yourself up and hopefully you're fired up hearing this content and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to learn as much as I can about how to manage my diabetes and master it because there's a lot to learn here. So don't forget to watch the rest of my playlist up here about taking your diabetes head on with things that are actually helping heal your body from the sugar addiction and all of the other mechanisms at play. Jump into that video and I'll see you over there.